And welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Heather Childers along with Bob Sellers. You know, a recent analysis reporting employment says that employment is down big time in states that voted for Biden and voted blue in the past election, as opposed to states that voted red. Take a look at this graphic. These are the states hardest hit. You can see amongst them, if we can bring that up. Well, it begins with Connecticut. It goes across the board. It includes primarily blue states, but there is one Republican state in there, and that's Iowa, which saw a drop of 7.9%. It begins with Connecticut, which saw a drop of 6.9%, and then it goes across the board down to 10.9%, I believe.
And we've got to read them off. Connecticut, Maryland, Rhode Island, Illinois. Iowa is the Republican state. California, and Massachusetts, Hawaii, and Nevada. New York also is in there. So that was from almost worst to worst.
Right. But the point being, not entirely unexpected, because a lot of these blue states stayed locked down a little bit longer.
Yeah, is there cause and effect?
That's what we're going to ask. So let's ask our panel and bring them back to talk about it. Jesse Jane, let's start with you. What do you think is the contributing factor in this?
Well, as a resident of Washington, D.C., that I dare to say has to be on that list. Yeah. You've got a list of from bad to worse. Nothing is good on that list. Living in D.C., they had kept the restaurants locked down so severely that many shut down and will never reopen again. When you're looking at the opportunity for Americans to even be engaged with public officials, they locked down the Capitol. When you looked at the opportunity to even go to church, they weren't even allowing us to go into churches. We had to go to services outside. Every single aspect of our lives was controlled to a point where many of them just simply left. Rental prices decreased immensely. People vacated. You saw moving trucks going one direction, and that was either north, south, or west, because they were nowhere to be found in coming into D.C. It's tragic, and these are the policies and the restrictions of this socialist mindset that the Biden administration perpetuates.
Yeah, and the bottom line when it comes to the red states, apparently they either stayed the same, like Kansas or Idaho, or they did a little bit better, or they only saw a minimal decrease. Chuck, what do you attribute the difference to?
Well, I think bad policies produce a bad economy. We've seen businesses, small businesses leaving. We've seen industries leaving. We've seen people whose jobs are never going to come back. How can we expect an economy to prosper if the job market and people who run these businesses are leaving and they're shutting down? The liberals don't care, apparently, about businesses. They don't care about the economy. They're the ones driving these businesses down, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, Bob, earlier in the show, we were doing live shots from some of the restaurants here in New York City, which are finally planning on reopening, but they were saying you could reopen, but you can't still reopen to capacity because you're still going to have to do that 6 feet apart.
Yeah, they're calling
apparently.
it 100%, but 6 feet apart in some restaurants is quite a bit, especially in New York. Real estate's pretty expensive. And by the way, Jesse Jane, let's not forget, if you go to a wedding, you can't dance.
Yeah.
I don't even think you're allowed to stand up now in Washington, D.C. at a wedding. These numbers should not surprise us because the equation in Republican states, they decided, you know what, jobs matter. Being in school matters. Part of the equation is people getting sick and dying. Part of the equation is maintaining our economy and people's livelihoods and their mental health also. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that more people are unemployed because by definition, they've been pushed out of work. The question then is, was it more dangerous in the red states to live there? And it doesn't look like it was.
Oh, it definitely doesn't look like it. Derrick, where are you located?
I'm in Maryland.
Okay, so Maryland was on that first list. Maryland has lost a lot of jobs.
Absolutely. And so I think a lot of this was fueled by, you know, I've said it many, many times, the hatred for our last president with the liberal community, it was unprecedented. And I think with a lot of these cities, the blue cities and these urban cities, those are the individuals who are living there. And whenever people are stressed or the economy is not doing well, the first thing they want is a change in governance. And I think that's what happened with President Trump. Now, you know, I was a White House appointee, And so I was definitely pulling for the president. But I think in a lot of cases with these urban cities, people did not vote for him. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah. Chuck, I wonder what is going to happen next, though. Will these cities be able to come back to the point where they were before? And how long will it take to rebuild?
Well, I think Biden's acting more like he's a part of the squad, so I don't see any hope in sight. I think what's going to happen, you're going to have people who are going to start going to the polls, voting for new policies, voting for new people. But at the end of the day, the current leadership with the current policies are going to keep the economy down. And I just don't see any hope for any change immediately in sight.
Yeah. Jesse Jane?
It's tragic that President Biden doesn't see that his own policies are crippling the economy he proclaims that he wants to help. I don't understand how this is going to work out for them. I had, in fact, thought that once he got into the White House, we would see a reversal on many of these policies and try to open up so he could take credit for a roaring back economy. But what it really boils down to is I don't think he can have a roaring back economy. He wants more government control, more people dependent upon government dollars. And this is the one way that they can go about it. It really is socialism on so many levels, and many people don't seem to recognize that.
Yeah, Bob, we've done those stories as well, that the economy is rebounding, and all that the Biden administration needs to do is get out of the way and not spend all of this money that they're talking about spending.
But they couldn't spend the money if they didn't convince you we were still in a crisis. So they keep wearing those masks.
You're so smart. Good point.